Hello and welcome to the big picture. Periodically, one or the other of the Godmen, of which there are plenty across the country, get to the center stage involved in one or the other controversy. While it was Asaram Bapu some time back, Baba Ramdev continues to be in the news. Swami Nityananda's controversies are well known. Rahim of Dera Sacha Sauda is another one who had been in the media spotlight some time back. Just to name a few. In the last few days, Sant Rampal in Hisar, Haryana had kept the entire Haryana administration on tenterhooks, refusing to appear in the courts and refusing to surrender. What was shocking was the way in which his followers, including a private army, kept vigil over his ashram in Barwala and resisted the police. Such militant loyalty and devotion to their gurus or babas is not uncommon. Though Sant Rampal has now been arrested and sent to judicial custody, the Godmen phenomena is something which needs an understanding. While their actions have been controversial and sometimes even criminal, why is it that they attract such loyal following? What's in them which makes them Godmen? Why is there such blind loyalty and devotion? What are the sociological and cultural factors as well as political and economic factors, if any, behind such phenomenon? We will discuss all this today with Professor S Jodhka, an eminent sociologist and professor at the Center for Study of Social Systems at the JNU, Ved Marwah, a former governor and a distinguished police officer, Bhavdeep Kang, senior journalist, who has done a lot of work on Godmen of India and has also written about it. And on the phone line from Chandigarh is Sompal Shastri, a former union minister, and more importantly, somebody who understands the Haryana society. Welcome to all of you. Mr. Sompal?
Yes, please. Yes, Mr. Nikam.
Mr. Sompal, this whole phenomenon, first what is this Sant Rampal phenomena? How did this emerge? What has happened? There are so many other such cult, Godmen around in Haryana and Punjab. Why are there so many of such Godmen?
You see, you have to have, Mr. Nikam, some reference to the history of society in Haryana. You see, go back to the 1880s and 1870s when Swami Dayanand Saraswati coming from Gujarat established Arya Samaj, and the maximum membership and followership that he got was from Haryana, and that too from rural hinterland.
Right.
Basically, what I'm trying to say that the rural society of Haryana was traditionally not given to such superstitions as other parts of India. I'm not pleading for some regional superiority or some kind of regional divide, but it's a historical fact because I've been associated with Arya Samaj and my father was one of the top leaders of Arya Samaj. And because Arya Samaj is a philosophy and its way of working and shunning superstition and having a scientific look into even the phenomena which are called spiritual. So the obvious inclination of the Haryanvis and Punjabis and West UP people, they found that it is closest to their traditional thinking which was already endemic to them. So now in that way, now here the question is that socio-cultural aspects are very complicated and complex to analyze in such a short period. But what I'm trying to say that the political parties and their leaders, when they start visiting such mutts and mahatmas and babas and eulogize them, they raise their lot in public mind. And then people starting using them for political purposes also. So that raises their social and political stature in society. So instead of guarding against them, instead of warning people from falling prey to such superstitious preachings and as you called militant loyalties, the governments coalesce with them, and once they come to an impasse and find that they are having all kinds of malpractices, including amassing monetary wealth and usurping and helping political power. I'm on a TV interview.
Okay. So,
So this is what I'm trying to say, that the politicians have the first responsibility. They should not be seen going to such people and prostrate before them. You have rightly mentioned the cases of Bapu, Asaram and so many. If they are there, they should be there. But then why leaders publicly go there and raise their stature in
okay.
Yes.
That's you have put it very well. So essentially you're saying that without the political backing, none of these godmen or babas or sons could have risen to the level which they rise. Okay, please stay on, sir. I'll come back to you. Professor Jodhka, is this how you would also look at it? Basically, this kind of babas, this phenomenon coming out, and then the political clout which they acquire is what is behind the way these people prosper and flourish.
This is partly true, but I think it's a much larger question. It's not simply about these babas and deras and these godmen. It's also the way we need to think about how our democracy, our political system should relate to the religious sentiment. And I think it's a larger question. Religion is a very complicated subject, and there are reasons why these people become popular. It's not simply because they manipulate or they exploit. They have their own kind of following. They give them sense of identity, sense of community. It fulfills some of their requirements. And these are obviously connected to the kind of changes that are happening in society. And it's not peculiar to Haryana or Punjab. It's happening all over the country, or maybe all of the subcontinent of South Asia. As you rightly said, that in South India also you have similar kind of, godmen. In Gujarat you have had godmen which create problem. But I think there's a larger question beyond godmen also. How does one think of democratic political process, and how should democratic political process should behave in relation to this kind of cultural, emotional life of people? And once you start kind of using that emotional and cultural life of people for political mobilizations, then it creates many problems. And this is something that is going on. It's not like it doesn't stop with this one case. Even in Haryana, we know about other stories where political establishment is kind of connecting with other deras and then trying to use the kind of sentiment and emotion they mobilize to find legitimacy, to find votes and stuff like that. So I think it's a much bigger question, and one should kind of try to learn from these. And they have been in past, unless we learn from them as a mature democracy, and there needs to be discussion like this, where common people will not allow such things for political process to kind of meddle with.
Professor Jodhka, my question is this. You made one point when you're mentioning sense of identity. So when you're talking of sense of identity, are the followers looking for something which they didn't have? Are they, is there something lacking which they find in these kind of people who give them a sense of identity? How does it work? Because, as far as political cloud which they develop later is concerned, that's okay. But how do they first emerge? Why do people follow them?
See, precisely, See, people are not fools. They obviously get something from there. People like you and me may not really sympathize with that. What's happening in that, my own empirical work kind of shows that on ground level, if you go to villages of Punjab or Haryana or perhaps other parts of India also, the old kind of communal life, communitarian life that people had is completely disintegrated. There's nothing that people can identify within the village. They are kind of, there is a loneliness, there is general fragmentation of community. So they're looking for other ways to connect with other people. And these people provide them that kind of space. There is openness. There is some kind of sense of, solidarity. They give them assurance. They help women to get their husbands off liquor. I think these kinds of things also, or, preference for male child, and they want to go somewhere. And this is not completely new. In some way or the other, it has existed for a very long time in this region. And so it obviously fulfills some of their emotional requirements, which otherwise earlier were filled locally at the village level. And villages are disintegrating very, very rapidly. There's a lot of fragmentation, a lot of anxiety, which is produced by the process of change. So they, in a sense, respond to those anxieties of identity, of being self, of community, of how to live a kind of morally authentic life. These are complicated processes. I don't think we should take it lightly and just put it as like people are foolish or they just get fooled by these people.
Absolutely. Mr. Marwah, in your own administrative experience, in your own experience in life and things like that, is this something which one can look at as just a law and order, like what happened in Barwala, in Hisar? There was an approach that this is a law and order problem. Here is somebody who was supposed to have been produced in the court or appeared in the court. He didn't appear. So, is there a tendency among the administration to look at these things as a law and order problem?
As the point has already been made, that cult figures are not peculiar to our country.
Absolutely.
They're there all over the world. They exploit gullibility of the people. That scope is perhaps more in our country. What makes it criminal and is the nexus that has developed between these cult figures and electoral politics and political leaders, and some elements in the police and the administration. The fact that in this particular case, the court order was given in 2006.
Right.
8 years have passed and he has managed to disobey the court order. Then the High Court order producing him before the court was given on 6th of November.
Right.
That also has taken its own time. So obviously, the police has not done its job. The administration has not done its job. Why should so much time be taken to produce a man in the court? Now, this is where the problem arises. And this is the problem with regard to other so-called godmen or these cult figures, because they are able to project themselves as larger than life and give the impression that they are above the law. And then again they exploit, like another Baba who's accused of rape cases and now is in jail, only goes to show how deep the problem is in our country. And I think
the law and order machinery treats them with kid gloves.
Obviously, because that's the point which I was wanting to emphasize, which has been made already, that there is a nexus.
Right.
And the police is not allowed to do its job as a professional. Police really had no choice. Once the court order was given, they should have implemented the court order, but they didn't do so for so many days.
But there was also this militant, loyal followers of his, with armed followers standing there. What does police do in that kind of situation?
Again, there are two categories of people. One is who are gullible people who are exploited, but there are others who are real antisocial elements,
right,
who are in the game for their own personal benefit, and they get this protection under the so-called cult figure or godmen, and they run their own rackets with the police looking the other way. Now, this is a very serious situation is developing in various parts of the country.
Various parts of the country. Bhavdeep, you have also studied some of these godmen and you have spoken to some of them. You've written about it. How do you look at this phenomenon? And you're also familiar with what's happening in Punjab and Haryana.
Precisely. Well, I can safely say that most of the godmen today, practically all, there is not one who is free of controversy. The thing is that
and controversy inevitably with criminal background, criminal consequences.
Absolutely, absolutely. And in most cases, they manage to beat the rap. We've had some classic cases in the past. Chandraswamy being a shining example.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, in terms of a godman who has a large cult following, it's a mutually advantageous situation for the politician and the godman. The godman acquires political influence and the politician gets a vote bank, a ready-made vote bank, because the followers will vote for him. Now, the question here is, why are we so vulnerable to these godmen, more vulnerable perhaps than we've ever been? I think one reason is certainly we've been cut off from our source of spiritual solace. The other is that the increase in materialism and consumerism, particularly in the middle classes and the upper middle classes, and a generalized dissatisfaction. So just as you're not feeling well, you take a pill, you look for a ready-made spiritual product, which allows these godmen to market spiritual solutions. And we swallow them because we need them. Having said that, there are different kinds of godmen which offer different kinds of spiritual products. Okay? If you're unwell, if you're looking for some kind of health solution,
go to Baba Ramdev.
Go to Baba Ramdev. If you're dissatisfied, if you're depressed, you go to, say, Sri Ravi Shankar. So you have, it's a cafeteria approach, and they all have a range of spiritual products that they offer you for different reasons.
For different classes of society also. Yes, Mr.
Marwah? I'm not an expert, but I just want to make a distinction between the so-called godmen who have spiritual, dimension. There are others who are plain, simple
fraudsters.
Yeah, monsters and scoundrels. The two should not. Ravi Shankar, whether you agree or disagree with him, has a spiritual dimension.
Spiritual angle to it. Mr. Shastri, Mr. Sompal Shastri, my question to you is this. There is talk going around. Some people say that people like Sant Rampal or even Ram Rahim of Dera Sacha Sauda, these are people who have been able to provide some kind of a solace, actually from some kind of oppression. They are seen as Babas or sons whose followers are more or less the lower classes, people who seem to have been oppressed in the society. Is that a reality? Is that why you find among the followers of these kind of Babas, more lower class people, oppressed people?
No, it's not correct. Even some very moneyed people go to them. They go for the same reasons, for fulfilling their mundane desires and wants and do these spiritual blessings and seeking them. So they have made this spirituality as a business. So here you see, I would go on a different tangent. There are two things. One is the socio-cultural aspect. That is a long-term process. And you must have seen that the Renaissance, starting with the Rajaram and so many, this theme of our society and cultural Renaissance has been totally lost in the present context. One is that. But which is more important and which is pertinent in this context of Rampal and Bapu and so many others you have mentioned, I already told you. What we are to discuss is the stance of the government, the politicians, the political parties, and their attitude towards these people. They indulge in all sorts of illegal activities, including amassing wealth, and there is no income tax act or any other thing. You are hauling officials and politicians for amassing disproportionate assets, but nobody questions the assets and these doings, and these cannot be done. These are being done openly. Every day they are amassing wealth. So why should they not be subjected to some kind of legal scrutiny? And some legislation is brought in, which has been also called for in the context of a murder of that reformer in Maharashtra. I don't remember the name of Professor Dabor, who was killed because of his anti-sorcery campaign in Maharashtra. So it calls for a strict law and also asks the intelligence agencies and police agencies and civil administration to keep a watch on their untoward activities.
Mr. Sompal, sorry to interrupt. You have been in the government, you have been a minister, you know how governments function when it comes to people like this. You know them better than all of us here. But my question to you is this. As far as Sant Rampal is concerned, there is also this feeling that he has been the way he has been preaching, whatever he has been preaching, this has rubbed the upper castes in Haryana, especially the Arya Samadhis, the Jats and things like that on the wrong side. He has taken on the Arya Samaj, and that is why he is being hounded like this. This is one of the ways in which this whole episode is being looked at. How do you look at it?
No, Mr. Nikam, please hold for me. Though I am an Arya Samaji and I don't have any hesitation to accept that I have a lineage of Arya Samaj, but Arya Samaj did not do it for some personal reasons or for the reasons that their domain was being intruded upon by this Godmen. They did it for social reasons, and they were demonstrating only peacefully. But they also could be asked by the government now. But what we have witnessed now, how many murders have taken place, how much wealth he has, and how many people have been roped in by him for reasons which cannot be legitimate, rather which are patently illicit and illegal. That is the issue.
No, absolutely. No, sir. We are not trying to defend the illegalities and criminalities of these people, but we are only trying to understand the phenomenon. Professor Jodhka, the question is this. When you were earlier, when I asked you about the sense of identity also, are these the factors which gives them some kind of a legitimacy that, they are supposed to be being the voice of the voiceless, or being with the oppressed, and in a society where there's so much inequalities, these kind of people get some kind of a legitimacy talking in the favor of those people.
I think there is a point in that. What we are witnessing is, on the one hand, as we are discussing, that these are entrepreneurs. They are not simple religious people with some kind of religious background. They don't come from religious families in that sense. They come from nowhere.
Yeah,
and they're very smart people. They're able to kind of build a kind of cult of their own. And these cults then become very powerful. They use media, they use politicians, they
buy media, they own media, sir.
They
Some
provide
of them own
various
media.
kinds. Yeah. They have their own media. But second point, I think, which you are trying to make is, on the whole, I think in Indian society, or society outside India, also all over the world, there has been a kind of increase in religiosity, particularly over the past 10-15 years. And along with that, there is also a kind of differentiation of religiosity. Now, different people want different kind of religiosity. It's not simply a question of packaging for consumption. It's also these poor people, as you rightly said, Dalits and other communities who earlier did not have any site of their own.
Right.
And many of these new deras provide them those sites where they can feel comfortable, they can identify with. But having said that, I think the point that Mr. Marwah was making is very, very important. And that is the professional attitude of the state's kind of agencies towards any kind of law and order problem. Whether it is for lower caste or upper caste or whichever religion. Once you have that, once you give that message to the society that anyone who crosses the boundary of law will be treated like any other citizen, then things would not really reach this point. The point is that when the message goes that it is done selectively for some community, for some caste, that creates more problems. And I think the police force should be allowed to be professional, and political process should also mature. It should kind of realize that in the long run it would not pay to anyone. And I think that is something which we should kind of repeatedly convey, and this is a kind of learning kind of incident, and we must learn from this as a society.
What is there to learn, Mr. Marwah? Who should learn what from this? Because, these are things which have been happening for, maybe not this kind, we have not witnessed this kind of militant, resistance from in other places, but this is absolutely shocking.
Both the politicians and the police should learn. The politicians should learn that in the long run, if things get out of hand, they are going to lose public support rather than gain public support. The so-called vote banks are going to turn against them. And the police should learn that ultimately they'll have to face criticism. And they
have to face the music ultimately.
Merely making an excuse that we couldn't do it earlier because of this and that reason is no excuse at all. They should do a professional job. I'm not saying that the police should have stormed the place.
What was the other option they had?
No, I mean, they could have taken 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. I mean, but they have taken almost 2 weeks. And apart from that, why did they allow all these elements to keep on gathering? And this man not being produced in the court from 2006.
No, Mr. Marwah, my question to you is this. What kind of a leeway does the police or the administration have in these kind of cases? This man must have been a very small guru at some point of time, gathering with a few of them. As they start growing, is there any way in which the administration or the police can intervene and ensure that, whatever they're doing in a lawful manner? Is there any scope for such kind of intervention at all?
They start their activities by committing low-level legal violations. The scale goes on going up and up as their stature in the so-called political circle goes up. Their clout goes up. So the police should have zero tolerance for these people, and moment they cross the limit of the law, they should be taken.
But would you agree that many of the lower level police officers may also be followers and devotees of this kind?
No, they're not followers, devotees, but they're scared. This brings us to our basic point that these days political interference is so much in police functioning, not only in Haryana, all over the country.
Right.
And we need now a professional police force which should be allowed to do its job according to the law.
Absolutely.
And that is not being done.
Bhavdeep?
You know, at Prime Minister Modi's swearing in...
I also want you to address the present Rampal issue in the context of the change in the governments.
I will come to that. But I just want to point out that when Prime Minister Modi was sworn in, right in front, in the VVIP seats, were high-profile Godmen.
Absolutely.
I won't name them, but
Absolutely.
I think everyone saw them.
Right.
And there's one point that we haven't addressed so far. Why is it that these Godmen's followers are willing to die for them?
Exactly.
Why do they have such a grip, such a hold? You see, when you approach a Godman, you are already in a vulnerable state of mind, right? And what does the Godman ask you for? Invariably, they want a complete surrender of will. Give yourself over to me and I will look after you. And for people who are vulnerable, there is an enormous sense of relief in being able to do that, in being able to hand over control to somebody else, right? After that point, then a certain amount of brainwashing happens.
A lot of, not certain amount, it must be a lot of brainwashing for somebody to give up their life. Or ready to be ready to give up their life.
Certain techniques are used. There are videos that are shown. There are audio CDs that are played. And at the end of it, these people become absolutely committed and blind followers.
No, but you tell me, as far as the change in government, there were two governments. There was one Congress government which has been there for so long. It seems to have protected this man, and now the present government also was not in a very, good frame of mind to do anything till they were forced to.
A change of government makes absolutely no difference to these Godmen because they generally play both ends of the field. After all, that build-up of arms and the growth of this cult could not have happened if the previous Haryana government had not looked the other way.
And the police and administration, everybody seems to have looked the other way as this cult has grown. Mr. Shastri?
Sometimes even for their postings and transfers, they go to these Godmen to get it done.
Mr. Sompal, very quickly, you think that, now in this, after what has happened, do you see the politicians approaching these people in any way differently? I think we have lost Mr. Sompal Shastri there. Professor Jodhka, very quick final words to you. You think that, this kind of phenomenon is something which cannot be wished away. Is there any way to control it?
We need to talk about it. I think the point is made by everyone that, political class need to distance itself from this kind of process. And once we give them this boundary, that within that boundary you have complete freedom to have whatever religious faith you want to have, whatever religious belief you want to have, but you cannot violate the boundaries of law. And the political class needs to kind of recognize the fact that, if we have to have a healthy, mature democracy, we need to work the way we want to. I mean, we need to develop other kind of support system. This is also because we don't have support system. We don't have health support system. There are liquor shops in every village in Haryana and Punjab. You need to work on those things. You need to build a society where people feel secure. There need to be kind of institutionalization of citizenship and sense of security, where people would obviously then be, they'll have reason. If it's good schooling, they're good jobs, then the attitude of the common people would be very different. And
but it's not
kind of sense of
No, apart from the government, at the society level, what can be done to give some kind of solace to people who fall a prey to this kind of Godmen is something which needs to much more discussion and debate in the society. Anyway, thanks to all my guests. The fact is that this kind of phenomenon has been growing and may continue to grow if the society itself doesn't realize the harmful effects of that. Thanks to all my guests, Professor Jodhka, Ved Marwah, Bhavdeep Kang, and Sompal Shastri, who had joined us earlier. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another issue in the big picture, same time tomorrow.